In the opening scene, we see the protagonist Sawyer getting ready for work. She snuggles with her cat Tater Tots and finds it hard to separate from him. At work, the head doctor visits her office. He congratulates her on the amount of work she's finished and even lets her know that he's finally decided to retire. Sawyer is taken off guard, but she respects his decision. Because he'll be gone, someone will need to replace him. Jokingly, Sawyer recommends herself as a good candidate, but Dr. Bill hits her with the truth. He thinks that she's overworking herself and will for sure experience burnout. The hospital is his baby, and he wants to leave it to someone who has a life outside of work. Trying to justify herself, she lets him know that she has lunch after work with her friends, but he knows that she hasn't gone out in months. The job is challenging in itself, so having somebody to listen to him at the end of the day has helped the Dr. Bill a lot. Lucky for her, she's an excellent doctor, so he assures her that she has nothing to worry about. They've decided to have a retirement party for him, and that's when the decision will be made. Before heading out, Sawyer heads to her last appointment before lunch. The soon-to-be mother Hillary sits in her chair, excited to see the baby. Sawyer makes small talk to relax her, but she asks where her husband is. Hillary reveals that he's still working in the army, but luckily for her, her brother will be arriving soon to keep her company. Nurse Jules has always bickered with Sawyer about her lack of interest in dating, so she tells Hillary to set them up. Hillary couldn't be happier as she began talking about her brother, and unironically, he ended up having the same interests as Sawyer. However, Sawyer keeps it strictly professional and finishes the appointment quickly. At lunch, her girlfriends toast to her being the best maid of honor. As they mention Camille's wedding, they can't help but wonder if their friend has found someone as well. While eating the chips rather quickly, Sawyer lets them know that the only man in her life is her cat Tater Tots. Both Camille and Jeannie roll their eyes as they want their friend to find someone special. The only thing Sawyer wants to marry is the bowl of chips she was enjoying before Camille snatched it from her. Realizing that she's unserious, Camille calls upon an intervention. After work, Sawyer heads to the mall with Jules to buy a present. They talk about her dating life and Sawyer makes it clear that she doesn't plan on falling in love anytime soon. Feeling devilish, Jules suggests she makes a fake registry claiming that it would be therapeutic. Although she's not keen on the idea at first, Sawyer agrees in the end. They make a fake profile, but when it comes to the fiancé's name, they name him after her ex, Joshua Gotaway, as in, the one that got away. The work besties continue their fun while shopping, but the chaos is about to unfold in the morning. Before her appointment with Hillary, Sawyer gets scolded for overworking yet again by Dr. Bill. She tries her best and ends up convincing him to change her habit of working until late. Hillary arrives, so they head into the room for a check. As she's about to put cream on Hillary's belly, the door opens and a guy covering his eyes asks if he can walk in. Hillary reveals that it's her brother, so they let him in. The guy takes the hands off his eyes, and immediately his eyes meet Sawyer's. He gets lost in them and ends up tripping over the small desk by the chair where Hillary is lying. Fixing his posture, he apologizes and introduces himself as Landon. Curious as to what he does that lets him leave for a month, Sawyer asks him openly. Hillary lets her know that he's a vet, so embarrassingly enough, Sawyer gets up to salute him. Confused, he lets her know that he's a veterinarian and not a veteran. She sits down awkwardly, and it's safe to say that they've both embarrassed each other. Going back to Hillary, Sawyer lets her know that they'll be running some tests on her, so Landon asks when the results will be available. She lets him know that they'll be done by tomorrow, so he assumes that she works on the weekends. Sawyer lies that she only works on calls and claims that she's trying to find a work-life balance. Not only does Jules rat her out for lying, but Hillary suggests she and Landon go out for a cup of coffee to help with her work-life balance. They're put in an uncomfortable situation, so they agree only to make them shut up about it. Having finished with her shift, Sawyer gets surprised by her best friends, who blindfold her for the surprise. They slowly let her into the house before taking the blindfold off and surprising her with all of her family and friends. Shocked and confused, Sawyer doesn't know why they're celebrating, but that is when her friend Sarah comes to greet her. Sarah congratulates her on the engagement and lets her know that they're more than excited to have her wed. If you thought the surprises were over, you've thought wrong. As if having all of her close friends there isn't enough, Jeannie tells her that her mother is also there. Excited, his mother runs into her arms, letting her know that she couldn't be happier. Feeling guilty, Sawyer tries telling them that it's fake, but her wedding song starts playing, and her mother squeaks in joy. The song finishes, but Sawyer gets served cake. Once they start asking questions, she tries eating the whole piece just to have an excuse not to talk. Seeing that it won't last her for long, she fakes having a call from the hospital, so she takes the chance to leave ASAP. On her way back, she calls Jules, letting her know that they're no longer friends because everyone thinks that she's getting married now. However, back at her place, as they're eating cookies, Jules suggests she breaks up with her fake fiancé after a while, so that the story adds up. The following morning, we see Landon and Sawyer finally on their coffee date. Due to stuffing her face with candy the previous night, she decides on a coffee with no sugar, but Landon gets her a cookie just in case. After getting their coffee, they decide to walk to a nearby park. However, they end up bumping into Joshua, as if Sawyer doesn't already have enough on her plate. Joshua looks surprised to see her, but he's glad to have run into her. Before Sawyer has a chance to introduce Landon to Joshua, he assumes that Landon is her fiancé Joshua Getaway. Confused, Landon looks at Sawyer, but she decides to pretend like she's engaged to him. And luckily, Landon picks up on what she's putting down. After a short conversation with Joshua, Sawyer decides to explain everything to Landon. Apart from the registry, she lets him know why she and Joshua had ended things. While Joshua wanted to chase his career, Sawyer couldn't leave her family behind, so she decided to end things. However, now she's in a big pickle and worries that there might be no way out. Landon suggests helping her with the planned breakup and she agrees. That is until she gets a call from her mother, inviting them to dinner. Still deciding to go with the plan, Landon and Sawyer plan on letting her know about the breakup together. However, as they arrive, her mother Margaret can't seem to stop smiling. Not wanting things to go any more out of control, Sawyer assists Margaret and they try telling her the news. However, Margaret beats her to it and assumes that they're trying to tell her that she's expecting because of the baby's wishes in the registry. Sawyer assures her that she's not pregnant, and Margaret starts crying because she wants grandchildren. Landon takes things into his own hands, which only makes the situation even worse. Instead of telling her the truth, he assures her that they're planning for a honeymoon baby. Sawyer looks at him confused, but he shrugs his shoulders, feeling defeated. Margaret wipes her tears and asks them to follow her. On their way to her surprise, Sawyer begs her to stop and just listen to what she has to say. Margaret pays her no mind as she opens the door to a room that happens to be a baby's room. Stunned, Sawyer looks around the room in total confusion as to how Margaret completed the room in a day. Landon is shocked as well, but he decides to play along. Finally, Margaret turns to Sawyer, giving her a chance to tell her what she wants. However, seeing how happy her mother is for her, she can't break her heart by telling her the truth. Instead, she fakes being excited and goes with her plan. In the car, Sawyer realizes that she's screwed and that there's no way to get out of the situation. Being the true gentleman he is, he apologizes for the baby's comments, and to make it up to her, he suggests they go along for a while and then break up when he has to return from his holiday. That way, she'll be in the clear and he'll be the one that's hated on. They decide to go with the plan, and coincidentally, Sawyer gets a message from Dr. Bill inviting them to lunch on Sunday. To make it believable, they decide to get their story straight. At lunch, they talk about the surprising engagement and naturally get asked where they met. They pass that part, but Sawyer slips up accidentally, making Dr. Bill suspicious. Claiming that the strawberry pastries are amazing, she puts one on his plate only for him to reveal that he's super allergic to them. They try to cover it up by claiming that they're still getting to know each other, but Dr. Bill can't help but think that they're rushing things. Luckily, they make it out that lunch alive, but the challenge is not over yet as Landon or Joshua has to meet her friends next. They go to the ice castles where they have so much fun, but Jeannie and Camille decide to test him. The only thing Landon lies about is his name, and they seem to love him. As Jeannie and Camille show affection to their partners as a sign of appreciation, Jeannie points to Landon to kiss Sawyer on the cheek. He does as told, but Sawyer turns her head just in time for them to kiss. They can't help but feel embarrassed. Luckily, they recover quickly. After a whole day of pretending, Sawyer and Landon are finally left alone. He apologizes for the kiss, but she assures him that everything's fine. They can't stop smiling at each other, and it is safe to say that things may be going somewhere. The following day, the new fake fiancés decide to spend the day with Landon's sister. As they're trying to assemble a baby crate, Sawyer begins talking about their situation with Margaret and how she's already made a baby room. Clearing his throat, Landon asks Hillary to bring him something just so she's out of the room. As soon as she leaves, he tells Sawyer that Hillary doesn't know that he's pretending to be Joshua. She's been feeling guilty for taking him away from his personal life, so she couldn't be happier that he's met her. And because of that, he doesn't want to break her heart by revealing the truth. Although she doesn't like his idea, she ends up agreeing to it for her sake. It seems that Hillary isn't the only one excited for Sawyer and Landon, or should we say Joshua. Margaret is so excited about the wedding that she's made a board for wedding ideas. Sawyer finds the whole thing funny, but Margaret seems to be serious. After hearing all of her bizarre tips and tricks, she lets her know that they won't be doing any of it for their health's sake. After a while, we see Hillary in for another checkup. When she asks Landon to give them some privacy, he decides to let them enjoy their girl talk in peace. However, Dr. Bill spots him in the hall, so he calls out to him as Joshua. Landon doesn't turn, which only confuses Bill, but he catches up and surprises him. Landon comes up with a lie immediately, but Bill insists he visits his fiancé. Funny enough, he takes him back from where he left, and Sawyer and him pretend like they didn't just see each other. A couple of days later, we see them doing a real couple of things. They agree to babysit Camille's kid, as she and her husband go out to have some fun. Camille makes sure everything is fine before going out, but Sawyer assures her that they'll be fine no matter what. Finally, they leave, and the trio gets to have some fun. While having a tea party, the little kid ends up sneezing her sandwich right back up as she takes a bite out of it. Surprisingly, Sawyer becomes grossed out, and Landon finds it hard to understand how she's fine with birth but not with child's boogers. Regardless, it seems that all of that disgust wasn't for nothing as Sawyer ends up getting a cold. Fortunately, Landon insists on taking care of her, and they spend the evening watching their favorite program, the cooking channel. Some time passes by before Sawyer returns to the office, as she fights strongly to beat the cold as soon as possible. If Landon hadn't taken care of her, Dr. Timothy doesn't believe that she would have felt the same. He arrives at the office with a smile, but his smile grows bigger as he reveals his decision about his replacement. He's decided on Sawyer, as he couldn't be prouder of her for bettering both her personal and work life. Sawyer doesn't know what to say, so she thanks him for trusting her. As he tells her the news, Jules walks in with lunch in her hands, so he lets them enjoy. Although she feels good about the promotion, she can't help but think that she doesn't deserve it. The fact that she's lying bothers her a lot, and she wants to change it. However, Jules assures her that she's a great doctor, and that having a fiancé didn't play any role in getting the job. Besides, Joshua might be fake, but she notices the way Landon looks at her, and even Sawyer admits that he's great. Seeing that she likes him, Jules sets up a bet. She tells her to ask Landon on a first date, and if they end up kissing, she has to buy her wontons, but if they don't, Jules has to buy her soup. So, Sawyer texts him, and he agrees right away. At the date, Landon can't help but feel appreciative to be enjoying some time alone with Sawyer. She giggles at the thought that they always have an audience, but is glad that he agrees. Wanting to know more about him, she asks how he decided to become a vet. Excitedly, he reveals that he had rescued a squirrel as a child, which had solidified his wish for helping animals. He takes the courage to ask her a personal question as well. Seeing that she's a successful woman, he can't help but wonder why she's single. Sawyer admits to closing her heart to dating after her father had passed, and then opening it and going on awful dates. Sawyer lets her know that it's because she's successful that men fear her. Regardless, they decide to order, and end up stuffing their faces. At the end of the date, he takes her home and even leans in for a kiss. Oblivious, she misses it, but luckily he leans in again, and they share their first kiss. The following morning, Sawyer gives Jules a box of wontons, and Jules couldn't be happier. While enjoying some board games with her mother, Sawyer accidentally calls Landon's by his real name, but luckily she covers it up quickly. Like her daughter, Margaret gets curious as well, so she asks how he's stayed single for so long, despite being a catch. Landon reveals that he used to be married, but his wife left him due to the lack of attention she was getting. Being in vet school had only made it harder for Landon to have a personal relationship, and unfortunately, she didn't understand his lifestyle. What hurts the most, however, is the fact that she told him that he was her biggest mistake on the day of Christmas. Sawyer can't help but feel bad for him, so she assures him that it's her loss, and not his. After having fun playing board games, the trio moves to the Christmas tree to decorate it. Margaret thanks Landon for showing up just in time, when there's no space for any more of Sawyer's ornaments. Landon laughs, assuring her that it's his pleasure, and thanking them for the hospitality, as they've made it his best Christmas yet. Margaret leaves to grab more popcorn, leaving the two of them alone. They realize that they're almost done with the play pretend, but Sawyer wonders what will happen after. Landon shrugs his shoulders, clueless, but that doesn't stop him from asking about Dr. Timothy's retirement party. The following morning, we see Sawyer with her besties at the shop, picking out a dress for Camille. While Jeannie looks for the bathroom, Camille walks out in the most beautiful dress, and Sawyer couldn't be more excited. Camille starts crying a bit, not only because she's happy to be getting married, but also because Sawyer has finally found someone good for her. Sawyer smiles, but as Jeannie returns, she brings back a dress that is the perfect one for Sawyer. They make her try it, and as she puts it on, Landon decides to FaceTime her. At first, she's embarrassed, showing only her face so he doesn't see the dress. He notices that something is off, so she flips the camera and reveals the dress. He's stunned, petting her knowing that she's the most beautiful bride ever. They talk about the retirement party, but before Sawyer hangs up, she accidentally tells him that she loves him. Hanging up quickly, she becomes terrified of the words she just said to him. She confides in Jules, who doesn't think that her saying that she loves him is that big of a deal. On the contrary, she thinks that it's good that she told him, because it's obvious that she does love him. Curious, she asks what she's going to do about her for him, but Sawyer thinks that there's no future for them. He lives a couple of hours away, so there's no way for them to function like a real couple. However, she is worried that he may not show up at the party tomorrow because of what she said to him. Jules assures her that he'll show up, so we see them at the party the following evening. Sawyer appears to be worried, so Jules promises to be by her side the whole night. However, as soon as Sawyer sees Landon walking in, she runs to him, leaving Jules by herself. Luckily, Landon assures her that everything is fine between them. However, he admits that the reason he didn't call her back is because he lost his phone. They get approached by Dr. Timothy and his wife, and they try to act normal. Landon congratulates him on his retirement, but Timothy claims that he should be congratulating his fiancé. After making small talk, Dr. Timothy and his wife go to greet the other guests. It's time for couples to gather around for a dance, so we see Landon and Sawyer get closer to each other. They touch upon the fact that he's leaving soon, but get interrupted by Dr. Bill Timothy's wife doing a speech about her appreciation for him, both as a doctor and a partner. She lets the public know that Sawyer will be the one stepping in for him, so Sawyer stands up to greet the crowd. As she sits down, she sees Hillary at the corner of her eye, who motions for her to come over. Sawyer rushes to her thinking that it's something about the baby, but Hillary lets her know that she's found that she's married. She accuses her of lying to Landon and even threatens to tell everyone the truth. As she's going on about how bad of a person Sawyer is, Dr. Bill Timothy tells the crowd how good of a doctor she is and even claims that she's a better person. However, all hell breaks loose as Hillary's water breaks, meaning that she's going into labor. Knowing that she'll need her brother to be by her side, Sawyer calls Landon over, and the crowd hears it all. After delivering a healthy baby, we see Sawyer checking up on her when Hillary apologizes for putting her on blast and for assuming the worst of her. Sawyer assures her that all is well and decides to let her and Landon have some privacy. Walking out of the room, she gets told by Jules that some people want to talk to her. Sawyer knows that it's finally time to be honest with everyone, so she goes to meet her family and friends. They wait for her to tell the truth, so she decides to tell them everything from the beginning, from the fake registry to falling for Landon. Joshua may be her biggest mistake, but Landon is someone that makes her feel better about life. Dr. Bill understands that she's fallen in love, but can't bring himself to forgive her for the lies she's told. So he leaves. But he isn't the only one, as Margaret decides to step away because she feels like she's been played. Luckily for Sawyer, she has her besties to comfort her even when she's wrong. After talking with them, Sawyer lets Landon know how the conversation went. Foolishly, she tells him that the whole thing had been a mistake, not remembering how much those words hurt him once. He instantly becomes cold, and even decides to end things for good without any explanation. Sawyer spends her night crying in Jules's arms, as she can't understand why he ended things. The following morning, we see that Sawyer has rekindled things with her mother. Naturally, Margaret asks where Landon is, but this time Sawyer assures her that he's not coming back. Asking what she said to him to make him so upset, Margaret realizes that she called him a mistake on Christmas Eve, just like his ex. Sawyer realizes what she's done, so she starts beating herself, causing him to feel the same pain yet again. Margaret still has hope that things can get better between them, but Sawyer is certain that things are over between them. A few days go by before Sawyer is called back into office to hear the decision Bill has made. Before they have a chance to say something, Sawyer lets them know that they're right and is willing to accept any punishment that comes her way. Luckily, Dr. Bill assures her that she's forgiven, but when she asks for him to put in a good word for her with the new boss, he simply tells her that he can't. Getting up, he exits the office without further explanation, and his wife follows. Confused, she calls out to him, but as she reaches them, she sees the whole staff standing behind him, not letting her mistakes overshadow her talent in the medical field. Bill takes the cloth off the wall, only to reveal Sawyer's name as the head doctor. Seeing that he's given her the chance in the end, Sawyer can't help but jump for joy. Thanking everyone for their support, she promises to be the best doctor she can be. After fixing things in her professional life, Sawyer decides to take matters into her own hands and try to rekindle with Landon. As she's writing him an email asking him to give her another chance, an ad pops up on her screen, and it's about Landon's complimentary consults on any adopted pet. So, she decides to get her cat a friend, and use it as a chance to speak to Landon. She lurks around the event, trying to seem nonchalant and unaware that Landon is there. He spots her and she lets him know that she wants a cat for tater tots. He beats around the bush, so Sawyer decides to apologize for choosing the worst words to describe their journey. She knows that she's made a mistake and she realizes that. He tries not to cave in, but eventually does. He suggests they start from the beginning, so he introduces himself, marking a fresh start. After adopting yet another cat and naming him Churro, Landon can't hold it in anymore, so he leans in and they share a passionate kiss.